Hey guys, this is Jaster with KOR Live, here with a quick message before we get back to our regularly scheduled programming. I'd like to thank everybody who's checked out the iceberg so far. This has been so much more wildly successful for us than what we thought previously going into this. So thank you guys so much for watching and for commenting and doing everything that y'all are doing. Keep that up. Thank you very much. Now, with that being said, we're almost near the end of the iceberg, so if anybody has any suggestions for any sort of content that y'all would like to see going forward, just put it in the comments and we'll get right on it. Thank y'all, and let's get back into it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the almost famous sideshow known as KOR After Hours, where we discuss only the finest of the finer things in life. It's your host, Jaster Win, and coming with me along on this journey tonight is Kazari Kaiden and Gin Joe. How are you guys doing tonight?
Great.
I'm doing just fine.
Ooh, I'm glad to hear it. So, this is another Sasquatch Iceberg video. We decided to bring the gang along this time. I think we brought Devin along on the last one, whether or not he might have spoke like 2 words.
He was in the booth, but he was not recording. If I remember correctly.
Understandable. I know he was in them DMs, like sitting there talking, man, there's some wild shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Speaking of wild shit, we are now into the back half of this iceberg, so
we are officially down below the iceberg at this point on our chart.
Yeah, we're getting
we are now descending into the depths. We are on tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is tier 7, walls of the home being slapped. And, well, that's exactly what it is. Sometimes in highly active areas, Sasquatches will come up to houses and slap the walls. We don't know why. It could be an aggressive display. It could be an intimidation tactic. It could just be because they're fucking bored. We don't know. It is something that happens, though. That's about all we know.
No, like, you hear a big old sound in the middle of the night. You come out the next morning, there's just a big old, like, muddy handprint 8 foot up on the thing sideways. It's like, well, that don't make no sense. Crazy. So, just to bring everybody on the same page here, this Kaiden told us before we started recording that he has never engaged with an iceberg style video before. So, what we did is we took this iceberg, right? So the whole concept of an iceberg is that there's a little bit on the top and there's a whole lot on the bottom, right? So there's a lot of topics.
All right, so here I can explain it better. So the idea behind an iceberg basically is it's a collection of information, and the deeper you go on the iceberg, the more obscure and crazier the information gets.
Well,
so like up top, we have something everybody knows, like the Patterson-Gimlin footage, but then down below where we are is when we start getting into the woo.
And
when I say we're getting into the woo when we're talking about Bigfoot, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, that's partially, I guess, why I'm along, since I'm the resident skeptic on all things Bigfoot.
To be fair, one of my friends, I got a lot of skeptic friends at work, all right, that they actually, hear me out, I think Kaiden is a little bit more on the middle ground side of it. I got a friend who's literally like, hear me out, man, he believes in aliens but not Bigfoot.
What the fuck?
You might as well just believe in Bigfoot at that point.
I was sitting there, I told him, I go, bro, you believe in hundreds of thousands of year old civilizations traveling to us potentially, or at the very least more advanced than us civilizations coming in contact with us through any sort of interspatial or interdimensional capabilities, but a 10-foot monkey in the woods in North America is outlandish. Like, love you to death. He regularly listens, so he knows who I'm talking about, but we'll get into this here.
Well, put it that way, it's completely reasonable. Joking. Continue.
Well, speaking of, there's a lot of topics, right, that come into the fringe contact with Bigfoot, right? You got aliens, like Bigfoot could be like, I don't know, some sort of alien. You got some people that are like, well, we see a lot of lights, right? So you got a lot of association with a lot of different either cryptid, or paranormal communities that come into like this whole conversation pretty regularly, especially in the woo-hoo kind of circles here. Now, one of the lesser known, but more often than not, things you hear coinciding with Bigfoot is a ghostly apparition of a woman in a white dress. And then sometime afterwards, they'll have a Bigfoot encounter. Right? Now, this isn't something that you just hear in North America. Like, I could reasonably hear that in Appalachia, because there's plenty of ghost activity, plenty of Bigfoot activity, reports coming out of that area. But, like, you even hear this all the way out in Canada. You hear it in Germany, Estonia, Ireland, Japan, Malta, Netherlands. Like, all these people have women in white, right? So, there's a duo of authors by the names of Joshua Cutchin and Timothy Renner, and they went on Sasquatch Chronicles to talk about their book called Where the Footprints End, High Strangeness and the Bigfoot Phenomenon. All right? Now, what these guys do is they are folklorists, first and foremost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what they do is they approach paranormal, cryptic things from a folklore perspective, right? And try and get people's mind frame on how they're expressing themselves and how they're expressing these ideas through their folklore. And what they had come to find out is that Bigfoot is associated with a woman in white everywhere, but nowhere more so than Germany, to the point where they have their own names for these things, right? Now, what's also interesting is that they're also associated with the orbs of light over there in Germany at the same time. So you'll have this trifecta where you're out in the woods and you see a woman in white with orbs of light, and then all of a sudden you got a Bigfoot encounter. And that's not unheard of over there, to the point where they gave a name to this woman named Perkta, okay? And I'm not sure if it has a connection with the Baba Yaga or anything like that, because essentially the reason why she wears a long ass dress is that she has bird feet, right? And so she is responsible for ferrying the souls of undead children to the afterlife, right? And that's what these orbs of light supposedly are in this folklore. And to the end of why is there Bigfoot, the Perkten are a group of people that follows Perkta and helps protect the souls of the children on the way to the afterlife. So, like, I found that really freaking interesting when I first heard about it. Mostly because, like, most Native American stories talk of a Bigfoot or talk of the Bigfoot, right? But they don't really have much purpose. Like, they don't really go too much into why are they here? What do they do? Like, they're mostly just like, they're just another peoples like us, and we try to stay away from them because they're 10 foot tall and we don't want to fuck with that. You know? So
this is one I've always had trouble stomaching, personally. Just because I lean very heavily on the Bigfoot is a undocumented species, theory. And it takes a lot of convincing for me to go, yeah, okay, there might be a supernatural aspect to this. It's kind of a thing I play by ear, but like, I don't know, like, it. My problem with it is it's like a percentage of sightings, right? It's not consistent across all of them, and that's my real problem with it.
I definitely believe there's a higher percentage of orbs.
Well, I mean, I kind of got to agree with Cass, too, because especially, too, it's like, like, if Bigfoot does exist, let's be honest, it's going to be something like, like a grill and all that stuff. There's not going to be a purpose for it existing. Because, I mean, what's a purpose for anybody existing? It just, we're here. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like trying to associate a meaning with the existence of like a creature. I think it's not something you're ever going to be able to do unless you're just really deep into woo, I guess you could say.
Right. And one thing I think the authors did bring up too is like the innate human need of when you can't explain something with your methodology that you have at your fingertips, you try to find a purpose, a higher purpose in something. It's why a lot of folkloric things over history, whenever the Catholic Church expanded, became like everybody's gods became saints, all this other kind of stuff, right? It's because they're trying to explain things and give purpose to things.
The human need to explain and categorize things. Yeah.
So I think that's where that's coming from. Like, I brought it up in the last episode. I'm much more on the hominid theory. Like, if something can evade us and is apparently taking its dead away to where we can't find bones easily outside of, like, weird burial caves and all this other kind of stuff, and apparently we can't get into the Indian burial mounds. And some Indian burial mounds, some of the Native Americans are like, it's not us in there. But, like, there's plenty of other ways that they could explain this situation. Like, if I personally think if they're smart enough to evade us, smart enough to understand to evade us, and they have their own language, like what you hear in the Sierra sounds, like that starts to talk about relic hominid a lot more than a relic ape. You know what I mean?
Wow, what a perfect transition, because the next one is actually Type 4 Sasquatch.
Well, I was just gonna add one last thing into just from the whole aspect thing he was talking about. If you're also going to try to prove the existence of these things, starting from a folklore perspective is probably not the best way to go about it, because
no, it is not. No,
Yeah,
no,
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, it's just because that's just rife with I mean, like, I guess you'd say like bias and all that stuff.
It's like, it is interesting to know folklore connections, but using it as proof is like walking. That's like if I wanted to prove Dogman was real, so I use Little Red Riding Hood as proof.
Right. Well, I mean, even still too, it's like if you're going to try to convince like somebody that Bigfoot is real, talking about like orbs and mysterious white women and taking the souls of the dead, and all that stuff, it's like.
That sounds like a crazy person.
Yes, you're gonna. It's like what I mean, especially too. It's like, for instance, when Jaster was
trampolines.
Yeah, when Jaster was talking about this, my first thought was, "Are we sure psychedelics were not involved in this?"
I'm about to say something like that.
It's like are we absolutely positive that the people that didn't see this thing were chomping on like mushrooms like an hour before or so?
To be fair, there are natural mushroom spore springs. Like, and stuff like that. Like, there's like Salem, Massachusetts, they found out that a very likely reason for the witch trials was that they were drinking the spring water, right? And then that time of year, turns out there's a cave where the spring source originates from, and there's psychedelic mushrooms that naturally grow in there.
I was about to mention something about that.
Everybody was having a bad trip.
Well, everyone was having a bad trip, and a lot of people paid for it. But yeah, I guess that could be for a later episode. Right now, we're on Bigfoot though, so Type 4 Bigfoot. Yeah. Let's go.
So Type 4 Bigfoot. I'm really just gonna go ahead and talk about classifications as a whole. Over time, as people begin documenting encounters more and more, and we've gotten better at describing Bigfoots, we've noted there's a couple of distinct types, and they're described as 1 through 4. This is something that's really only emerged in the last 10 years or so, because I remember first reading about this kind of stuff around like 2012, 2013, and back then the classification system, I say classification as if it was, like, documented hard proof. This is just still slang that gets tossed around, but like it's just a short descriptive shorthand, basically. Back then, people still hadn't nailed it down. So basically, there's really 4 types that you can commonly see. 5 if you're counting skunk ape. The first one is your classical, stereotypical Bigfoot with the broad shoulders, cone head, all that stuff. You know, people call this the patty type, right? This is the textbook. That's a Bigfoot, kind of deal. This is the kind that everybody thinks of when you say the word Bigfoot. I don't really need to describe it that much. Next are ones that are primarily seen down in the South, so most specifically like Mississippi, Louisiana. I think in like the eastern part of Texas, Arkansas. So type 2s are more animalistic, like savage ones. These guys are very known for like kidnapping livestock and pets and eating them.
They also have less hair, right?
I
think they're like less hair on the face, like kind of.
Yeah,
thing.
less hair on the face. They're known to be really territorial. These guys are. Yeah, these guys are really mean. They're not. They'll fuck with them. Fucking with Sasquatch in general is not advised, especially type 2s. Type 3s, these ones are interesting because like people are like, well, they're kind of similar to Dogmans, but honestly, if I had to describe them, these ones are your mountain giants.
These are your Gugwees.
Yeah, your Gugwees. Yeah, they have the largest range of sizes. They usually live in more mountainous areas.
They have a snout, like pretty much.
Yeah,
all
they have
of them
a
are
snout.
more snouted, like baboons.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But type
also,
4.
These are the ones you're most likely to hear like paranormal traits of in reports, like glowing red eyes or being bulletproof at close range, which I think personally is just due to high amounts of muscle tissue. Because moose also seem to be bulletproof, but that's just because of how dense their muscles are.
You gotta pack a cannon for them shits, man. You gotta hunt that with a 45-70.
I don't think that's even gonna work.
Well, like, I don't know, there's like some out there stories of like old pot farmers in Colorado and all that way before it was legal, right? They're way out there in the woods for a long amount of time. And like, there was a good story about a Rocky Mountains guy, right? Where he was regularly pulling like $4 million worth of crops out every season. And he had a pod of them come up to him and he waged war on them. Because they were getting in his territory, and at first he thought they were just other pot farmers, right? So, it's all guns all the time, and it turns out, no, these were these things. And
yeah.
he said nothing short of a 357 would put one down. It got to the point where he said he went back to his cache and got a 50 caliber rifle because that was the only thing that he could consistently put one down with. And we're talking like muzzleloader. So like, we're talking a lot of firepower, a lot of dense muscle tissue, like anything with a lot of like muscle tissue, even in Africa, that shit's hard to put down.
But if he was putting them down regularly though, where are the corpses?
Well, like,
see, that's what's so much fun about that story, is because he's a pot farmer that was doing it illegally, so if he had any corpses, he wasn't going to fucking present them, because then people would ask about it, and that's why that's so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's a fantastic story to listen to, but then you start questioning it, and it falls apart so fast.
Yeah,
right?
I mean...
I do... Like, anybody that does say they've shot at one and wounded it, or shot one and possibly put one down, or whatever, it's never with a 9mm. Never once.
Yeah,
like,
no, if they say,
no.
well, I pulled out my pistol and killed it, they're talking shit.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, that just stands to reason. I mean, you have something that big and all that stuff. I mean, everyone knows like a 9mm ain't going to take down a grizzly. So it's like if you're talking about something that's like larger than a grizzly, the 9mm definitely ain't gonna cut it.
Yeah, that ain't gonna cut it.
I mean,
and let's face it too. It's like if you're trying to tell an outstanding story, what's going to be more impressive, a 9mm or a 50 cal?
Yeah,
man.
I mean, if you're shooting something like that with a 9mm, all you're gonna do is just piss it off.
Mm-hmm.
And so our last type is the one that Jaster actually name dropped. These guys are the relict hominids. These ones are the ones that have the most human-like traits of the four. They're a bit leaner, but they have more like athletic builds, basically.
So, fun fact too, they're actually the pygmy variety of Bigfoot. And this is this is the wild part. So, like, this is where the orang pendek is classified pretty distinctly into, which is the Eurasian Bigfoot. They have plenty of sightings of these type things, where, like, this is also a thing in Appalachia, too, where it could be a baby Bigfoot, you know what I mean? But they've got these, like, little people, is the easiest way of putting it. It's where, like, a fully, perfectly proportioned, it's not like, you know how we have dwarfism in our population, right? They don't look like, say you took a regular size, regular average build person and shrunk them down like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Like, that's what people are reporting. And, like, there's also a lot of paranormal stuff associated with these things. But, like, personally, I think they're seeing pygmies. Like, especially if you're in, like, Indonesia or, like, China or India, there's plenty of uncontacted pygmy tribes out there.
Yeah, and, I mean, how small are we talking about here with these guys? Because, I mean...
there's videos where they're, like, 1 to 2 foot tall, maybe. I think at the most they're 4 foot tall. There's some videos where they're kind of in that range, but it's, like, 3.5 foot tall probably at average, I would say.
Does that still qualify as a Bigfoot, then?
Well, like, they're lumped into the same phenotype because they're usually covered in hair.
Okay.
Like,
I disagree about the size, personally. These guys tend to be the smallest in Bigfoot terms, but, like, I've heard averages of, like, 6-7 feet, usually.
So they're just lumping both of them together. Because, like, I know the Type 4s for those, like the weird small-ass sightings that you hear, like, primarily out in Asia.
And this is specifically, when I'm looking at this categorization, this is specifically referring to North American sightings.
Okay, that's fair.
And Type 4s usually come from, like, Northeast America.
Mm-hmm.
So just something to think about over there. I know they're especially common in New York, like Coney Island area, and the wilderness around that. There's a couple really dense forests there that these guys are said to have been seen in. So.
Oh yeah, like any sightings that I've ever heard of any across the globe of anything like that size is generally in a very dense environment.
So, there's your categorizations there, basically. Now, you know, personally, the ones I'm most interested in are Type 1s and Type 2s. Type 1s just because that's textbook Sasquatch, you know, that's the kind we know the most about in terms of, like, gait, behavior, description, stuff like that. Type 2s I also have an interest in because those are in the region that I live in. So
I'm a Type 3 guy.
Yeah, like, Jaster loves his mountain giants. Those are the ones he researches the most.
Beast of 7 Shoots, man, is like because, like, I always thought the shit was bullshit, right? Like, people just fucking with me, you know what I mean? And then, like, you see that photo, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, no, even Devin was like, what the fuck is that?
Like, that thing's carrying a dog.
Yeah.
Or something. Like, it's got something.
Yeah.
However.
So there you go. That's all of our, that's all of our categorizations. So our next one is infrasound. I think we've name dropped this a couple of times on previous episodes, but we need to actually discuss the concept itself. So first off, infrasound is actually something that happens in nature. It's a low-frequency sound with a frequency below the lower limit of human audibility, generally 20 hertz. hearing becomes less sensitive as frequency decreases. So for us to perceive infrasound, the pressure of the sound must be really high. So our ears can still sense and perceive it, but we don't hear it, if that makes any sense. Usually when humans perceive it, it's because we're feeling the vibrations. Now, what's interesting about infrasound is that it can produce feelings of unease and nervousness.
Physical sickness, even.
And even physical sickness if it's intense enough. Now, what kind of natural events produce infrasound? Severe weather, avalanches, earthquakes, volcanoes, the kind of vibration you hear near waterfalls, that's infrasound. But there are actually animals in nature that also use infrasound, usually to communicate over large distances, most importantly being whales. But also elephants, hippos, rhinos, giraffes, okapis, peacocks, and alligators use it. Feline purrs have infrasound, which is a well-known fact because they use it to, heal themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's been scientifically studied.
A lion's roar is almost
the
a
lion and tiger roars. Yeah. There's at least one big cat in Africa that uses it during their hunting. And infrasound is often thought to be why animals are able to predict natural disasters and get the heck out of Dodge. So how the heck does this tie back into Sasquatch? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the way it works is that Sasquatch is believed to be able to communicate and use infrasound, which honestly is pretty believable because we know Sasquatches have voices that are powerful enough to communicate over long ranges. There are plenty of stories where people will be out hiking and they'll be in a valley or something, and they'll hear a sound down at one end, and then they'll hear a response all the way down from the other. So knowing their lung and vocal cord capacity, it's very easy to believe that they can produce infrasound. And there are plenty of reports in areas that are known to have Sasquatch inhabiting them, where people have suddenly had this uneasiness and have been unnerved and wanted to get out of there. And it's believed that this is used as another intimidation tactic, much like rock throwing. Now, why do we have this so low on the iceberg? Is because infrasound is an extremely bizarre scientific phenomenon. And tying it into Bigfoot makes it sound weird. Bigfoot, if it just speaks right, can make you nervous. And this isn't just I'm going to kill you kind of thing. It just goes, ook. And then you're going, I'm quicker than me boots. So
I think it's probably one of the more reasonable things, because something that size would have such a massive diaphragm.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount, the frequency of the recordings that people have had don't match other audio signatures of other things. I feel like it's a fair thing to attribute to Sasquatch.
Well, I would feel be remiss to point out that even there are some human singers that can produce infrasound notes.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's that too. And it's not unheard of for some man-made devices to even cause infrasound stuff as well. So, you could take that into account. I mean, it's possible that, it could be, Bigfoot doing that, or it could just be someone in the woods fucking with you.
Well, I think it's when people come into contact with these things, right, and they experience nausea or loss of sight or whatever, they start getting really dizzy or whatever. Is this just infrasound, or is this them trying to explain away the fact that they had a panic attack because they saw something they couldn't explain, right? Because some people would be able to say they would love to say, hey, I saw the Bigfoot, but they wouldn't really want to tell you about the part where they shit their pants.
Yeah.
So, I feel where there's more than a possibility, I think, because I think if they were to get some amount of a up-close, really, really up-close audio recording, that you would be able to probably find some amount of infrasound in these scream vocalizations that they do. Like, because I feel like that would be the time when they would generate it, you know? Is when they're, like, belting off a note like the Ohio Howl, like, would probably have some amount of an infrasound quality to it, right? But I feel like I would take some amount of proximity to the thing making the noise to actually pick that up. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Possible. I mean, I know I'm not a expert at all in the field of infrasonic, so
Right.
I would not be one to tell you. But I mean, also too, just without knowing the source of the sounds themselves, you know, that's one thing too. Is it just, you know, tie it all back? It's like we have no evidence really that it is a Bigfoot creating these things, these sounds. So first we have to prove the Bigfoot. Then we can, I guess, you know, narrow it down to, okay, are they doing infrasonics and all that stuff? Because I mean, I know it's fun to speculate, but yeah, I mean, as they
It's
say,
a hard thing to know right now, anyway.
right? And it all ties back to, like, there's an old saying, you know, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So
Totally.
yeah.
So let's go ahead and get into the next one here. This is probably one of the more interesting, in my opinion, kind of variations of the Bigfoot. Like, you know how you got, like, Sasquatch in North America, you got the orang pendek in, like, Southeast Asia, you got the yowie of
Australia.
Of Australia. They've got multiple names for it in Africa, and they got the Perchten in Germany, right? So there is one in China called the Yeren, all right? And this is mostly attributed to the Hubei province in the, I'm going to butcher the shit out of this, but it's a big-ass forestry district. That's
Shinongjia?
Shinongjia?
Shinongjia? I'm
Maybe?
going to say Shinongjia.
It's probably closer. Like, there's been sightings of quote-unquote hairy men since 340 BC or BCE. So it's definitely like the Warring States period of China, okay? And a lot of these people start to talk about it, and all this oral tradition starts to happen. But in the 70s, the Chinese government was really trying to get people away from folklore and all this other kind of extra thought and extra beliefs, right? So, like, it really started to disseminate away until it started to come back in the recent times, right? Whenever people are starting to kind of get back out there and there's more of a cultural revolution happening. So, the biggest mass report of sightings for these things were kind of in the 1950s and 60s, more when people were trying to figure out if this was something connected to maybe the Yeti or Sasquatch, right? And what I love about this, okay, is that this is the natural habitat of the prehistoric, actually proven to have existed Gigantopithecus, okay? And the Yeren, suspiciously, is orange. It's a big-ass orangutan, okay?
Our old friend Gigantopithecus.
This is, in my opinion, the most likely suspect. Because, like, the thing about monkeys and the thing about humans is that the dates keep getting pushed forward. We keep finding more and more stuff in the old world, especially about, like, oh, we thought the humans didn't come here until, like, I don't know, 800,000 years ago or whatever. And then they're like, oh, wait a second. It's more like 200,000 years ago. Oh, wait a second. It's like 70,000 years ago. You know, there's plenty of occurrences where the dates keep getting pushed up here, and they're finding more and more Gigantopithecus, like molars and stuff like that, because a lot of their remains got sold as dragon bones and stuff like that in, like, witchcraft markets and things like that. So there's not a lot of Gigantopithecus bones that we can find, because a lot of them's been scavenged up over the years and sold. So
Yeah.
the ones that we do have are starting to date back to, like, 10,000 years ago, right? Which, like, let's be honest, that sounds like a whole lot of time, but it's kind of a drop in the bucket of how long humans have been around. But like, also, that's not terribly far away from whenever China started as a community, as like a culture. You know, they're the longest running empire or longest running peoples in human history at this point. It's like 5,000 years worth of congruent culture. You know,
it's also worth mentioning if there's one thing the Chinese have always been good about, it's documenting things. They write shit down. So we know a lot about Chinese history as a result, and this extends to these wild men, where we have reports dating as far back as the Tang Dynasty, which is where reports of them first start popping up in the 3rd and 4th, BCE.
Right, but I've also seen too where with this particular thing, back in the 50s, 60s during the height of the whole year and craze and everything, apparently all of the evidence that examined about it ultimately came from known animals like bears, monkeys, and gibbons and all that stuff. Nothing from like, a ape man that seems to exist right now. So that's why, at this point, no serious scientific institution even recognizes that the Yeren actually exists. Is because there's no solid evidence, that they can't already explain from other animals.
Very similar song and dance to what we're used to over here. So
I would argue maybe the Ketchum Bigfoot Genome Project kind of threw more evidence in there that was kind of not so easily explained away.
Yeah. Also, too.
Yeah, but that was North American Bigfoot, not Yeren.
Yeah. Yes. Also, too, I will, as a side note, I did actually look up a pronunciation guide, and apparently it's Shenanjia.
Oh, so it is Shenanjia. Okay.
Yeah. So that's good. That's apparently that's from a pronunciation guide. So if it's wrong, don't blame me. Blame Google.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually had it right the first time.
Not bad. All right. So you wanna tackle one of the OGs of the wilderness community, Kaz? One of our heroes.
You talk about Survivor Man because you're more familiar with him.
Okay. So Les Stroud, right? So the man who was so real. Like, this is one of my favorite fun facts about Les Stroud, right? Is that he got this Survivor Man show. It's doing great. Everybody loves it, right? So, of course, Animal Planet executives decide to come in and start trying to fuck shit up, right? Duh. So they're like, let's start adding some fake shit, right? A little bit of Hollywood, dramatization. He was like, fuck that, right? He would just keep doing his shit. So they got a guy named Bear Grylls, okay? And that's the entire story of fucking, what was it, Man vs. Wild or whatever the hell show he had.
Yeah.
So, like, the dude actually slept in hotels, right? Ate regular food and tried to convince everybody to drink his own piss. Meanwhile, Les Stroud is out here literally looking like he went through Vietnam, because he literally did, right?
Was he the one? I'm sorry, was he the one where they would, like, just drop him off in some remote location and he would have to, like, survive for a while, or was that someone completely different?
No, that was him, and he had no camera crew. It was solely him filming things.
Yeah, the only one I remember from him, the only episode I actually saw that I remember was where he was dropped in Louisiana. He said, "I think I'll have to go west to find civilization." I was like, "You're gonna have to go a couple states over to find it, then."
No shit, right?
I was just being silly back then, but yeah, I remember him. He does seem pretty real. Yeah. Lot more real than Bear Grylls did. I'll tell you that. You actually saw him, doing all stuff, and he was honestly alone.
Exactly. So, like, there's more than a few times he's went on with Sasquatch Chronicles. Okay, I'm just throwing that out there. And there's a few times, like, to the point where Survivor Man even partnered with Sasquatch Chronicles to help them, like, get more, like, publicity for the show and everything. So he's even done a show like Survivor Man Bigfoot or something like that. I can't really remember what the exact name of the show is. However, he's definitely discussed the topic. He holds it. He's a skeptic in it, but he's like on the fence of like, I can personally see something like this living out in the places I've been, you know? Like, there's definitely enough food in certain areas for something that size, you know? There's plenty of clean water, plenty of isolation, you know? So
Right.
he's went on multiple hunts for this thing. The only problem I have with the situation is that he has done work with Todd Standing.
Who
Like,
we have mentioned before and pissed on.
he's the dude with the
Just really
super
quickly to
fake
explain,
fucking
Todd
video.
Standing is a known fraud in the community. Uh, Basically, there's this kind of cycle that happens with Todd Standing is he'll be like, "Look, guys, I have new evidence." Everybody will question it, and then it comes out it's fake
Every time.
every time.
Well,
It's not even close. So, like, he goes in, he does this shoot with them where it's obviously fake, like a fake fucking Bigfoot suit and everything, super close, high definition of a Bigfoot, right? And it's obviously fake. However, there's been plenty of years before that, and before that event, and after that event, where he's went on legitimate hunts and legitimate expeditions to see if he can find stuff. Because there's been a couple of encounters that he's discussed on Sasquatch Chronicles where he's had things happen to him that he can't explain, and not through malnutrition hallucinations. Like, he's like, I've had those. He's like, I was nowhere near that level of dehydrated or nowhere near that level of, like, out of food. I wasn't starving. I wasn't about to die. Didn't get bit, you know, and, like, on one or two occasions, he said he had mind speak happen to him. And that's something that's on the next tier, but we can get into that a little bit later. But that's what kind of gets him farther down on the tier for me than, like, say, finding Bigfoot or Bigfoot is real, you know, or killing Bigfoot, where he kind of goes into the possibility of more supernatural occurrences happening, and he's not afraid to say that something weird happened to him he can't explain. So I give a lot of respect to him because he definitely is the man he says he is whenever he's doing his shows, right? And he's definitely an outdoorsman of the wild, and he said he's saying shit he can't explain. I know plenty of old boys that lived out in the woods their whole life say they've seen shit they can't explain. So, get on to that. However, so which one you want to tackle next, Kaz?
I actually want to talk about Big Thicket National Preserve.
Let's go.
So, there are a couple of areas in North America that are known hotbeds of activity. For instance, we have the area around Mount St. Helens. I mean, really, you can extend that to all of Washington, but if you want a specific hotbed, it's Mount St. Helens, and really, there's a larger corridor that's a part of, but I would have to go dig out Thinker Thunker's notes about that, and we're already in the middle of a recording, and if I don't have it prepared, then fuck it, it's not getting in. But Big Thicket National Preserve is a park in Texas. It is really a region of southeast Texas, pretty close to the Louisiana border. It's recognized. It's an actual national preserve. It's a really, really complex system of ecosystems and stuff like that. And there is one specific, project going on there that has been documenting and following a pod of Sasquatch that live in that area. Jaster's a big fan of them. They're the North American Wood Ape Conservancy.
Yes, the NWAC.
Yep.
They're great. Like, we covered them earlier. They're one of the actual people trying to collect a specimen.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, one of the few people with the credentials to do so.
Yeah, we think they're legit.
Let's see here. Sorry, I'm also trying to order some food for whenever we do a little bit of a break between episodes because I'm starting to get hungry. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I do think that that's one of the biggest hotspots in the United States. Like, I think a lot of people kind of don't go for it, you know what I mean? Or they think that, maybe not, because it's only, like, not the fucking United States, but, like, it's only the northwestern part of the United States that gets Bigfoot, right? I hear that all the time. You know what I mean?
Which is not true, because there have been reports in every single state.
Absolutely. Like, definitely Alaska. I don't know if Hawaii's got any.
I have not heard any Hawaii sightings in ever.
Who knows? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. So, that's definitely one of the places where if you're like, I don't know, trying to get into Bigfoot or you're trying to figure out where do I start, well, that's the place. If you're near there, that's a hot
There you
spot.
go. They do a lot of documentation on their website. They have a podcast that isn't updated that often because they're busy doing field studies, but they do discuss things that have happened in the field, their motivations, stuff like that. It's a really good listen. It's called Apes Among Us. Highly recommend.
Absolutely. So, you want to get into the next one because I'm not so familiar with this next culprit here.
I actually don't remember.
Uh-oh. We gotta look it up real quick.
Hang on. We might just have to skip this one.
Well, tell me a little bit about the Bigfoot versus Dogman thing that we got going on here.
There we go. Yeah.
How
All
about
right.
that?
So, hang on.
I see that here on this particular list. I'm a little curious. I have to say so myself.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued. Is this gonna be like a Godzilla versus
All right.
Kong?
So, Dogman is my personal favorite cryptid. If we go beyond Bigfoot. These are big, pissed off wolfmen. I think I've mentioned them in passing in one or two episodes here. And the thing is Sasquatch and Dogman, at least in the few instances where where they have occupied the same area, are known to not like each other. Now, do they get into like big Godzilla versus King Kong style brawls that tear up forests? Not really, no. They tend to keep a berth of each other. In fact, North American Wood Ape Conservancy has noted that there is at least a pack of dogmen in the area as well, because it has caused the pod of Sasquatch that they track and study to move multiple times.
Yeah, they've even had run-ins with one of these two of these supposed dogmen actually, where like one of the people were down in a riverbank and the other one was up at the truck on the side of the road, and one of them comes up in front of the guy and he's backing up, right, trying to get up the hill towards the truck, and the other person at the car pulls out a gun and goes, no, there's another one beside you, and there's like another one in the bushes trying to get around and flank him.
Yep, that's common dogman behavior right there.
Like, right? And
one goes out in the open while another one goes behind the flank.
Mm-hmm.
Which is extremely concerning.
Right. I mean, what gets me, though, about this people that get the dogman encounters is, like, it's a intimidation first game. Like, but yeah. I've also heard of encounters where people have been attacked and, like, I don't know.
So, flat-out attacks and, like, getting injured aren't common, but bluff charges and getting chased are.
So I feel like if it wanted to eat you, you wouldn't be here to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, like...
Yeah, no, the dogmen just get their kicks off of scaring the hell out of people, and that's what's weird about them.
Mm-hmm. Like, allegedly, there's been reports of, like, either solitary Bigfoot or alpha Bigfoot of a pod engaging against dogmen, probably because said dogman got too close to the pod, you know, and the younger members of the troop. And, like, that's kind of reminiscent of kind of either hominid or, like, ape behavior, you know, where if there's a threat too close to the family unit, like, the alpha goes out there to, like, squash it, you know. Now, mind, that would be quite a fight, you know.
Yes, because we are talking about two superorganisms with extremely powerful builds, known for tearing down trees, throwing large boulders, you know, mauling cows and, you know, deer and stuff like that. And, dude, man, it'd be the fight of the century.
Man.
But that's the thing is, though, first off, encountering one of these things is just like a 1 in a million chance, right? Encountering both at the same time? Not likely.
And I don't think it serves to either species' survival instincts, because
No,
they
it
would
doesn't.
see like something equal to them as a whole lot of calories spent trying to fight and a whole lot of risk.
Exactly, yeah, because they're superorganisms, which means they have to have a high calorie intake. Why would you waste that on fighting something else? Which is why it's so interesting and a little bit more believable that they keep a wide berth of each other. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love to hear a report of somebody seeing a Dogman and a Bigfoot beating the shit out of each other. Be fucking awesome.
Get that on camera, bro.
It would make for an excellent trashy B movie. I'll tell you that much. But
I have a question though. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no. That's why you're here.
Yeah. How do we know they're superorganisms?
Oh, I'm calling them superorganisms just because of their size and their, what kind of intake they'd have to have.
A better word. They're definitely megafauna.
Megafauna is probably a better choice.
Yeah, just, considering we don't have a specimen to study or anything, so we don't know a thing about, their biological structure, their dietary intake or whatnot, I don't know that how we can just jump to the claim that, like, oh,
that's why I'm kind of dancing around it. It's because, like, it's like, we know there is some kind of interaction, and that interaction is to say, you stay over there and we'll stay over here.
Right. I was talking about, like, say, how are you saying, like, oh, they need, like, a tremendous amount of calories.
I mean, just think about it logically, right? Think about the kind of calories that we need to function on a daily basis, and then multiply that by, like, 4 or 5, right? Because the bigger something is, the more it needs to eat to survive.
Mm-hmm.
That's just basic life science.
So, like, there's a lot of... And also, like, with the North American gigantism theory, like in biology, right? Like, megafauna exists in our part of the continent more so than other places because of food and because of calorie intake, right? Like, these things have adapted to take a ton of calories in, hibernate, and try it all over again, right? So, like, becoming a lot larger than your equatorial counterparts makes sense, and being a supposed North American, either relic hominid or great ape, would stand to reason that it would fall in line with the traditions of other North American species and be bigger and require more calories, because everything else in our biology, in our ecosystem here in North America, tends to be bigger than its, like, old world cousins and require more calories, which is pretty interesting. Like, that's like a known biological principle.
Okay, so it's more just, I guess to say an educated guess.
Right.
So, all right, I just, when he first said it's like just, I guess I might have missed something, but to me it just sounded more like an assertion than anything else, but yeah.
I do tend to speak pretty confidently, so I can see how it could come off as an assertion.
Yeah,
I will say, I have only ever heard one report of meaningful interaction between these two stories from a witness that I would view as credible, and it was about 2 juveniles of both species playing with each other, and it happened all day, and it was the biggest goddamn racket there ever was. There was so much tree branches snapping and yipping and howling and stuff like that. And that's it. Literally only one. And the entire time I've been a amateur researcher of both of these entities, right? Out of all the countless reports I've listened to on either side, only one time have I ever heard of any meaningful interaction. Any other time I've ever heard of interaction between these two, it has been from hysterical people with overactive imaginations.
Right, people wanting to sell you something.
Yeah.
So, like, it's definitely something that people are reporting in the big thicket, but, like, I would also imagine that the possibility for this in, like, the Great Lakes area would be rather palpable to me.
Yes, because that yeah, because like north central, like North America, Illinois, Indiana, you know, uh, Michigan, Kentucky. That's really where most dogman activity is, and while it has been reported across North America, it's nowhere near as widespread as Sasquatch is. Um, and this is also worth noting that Dogman, because of the effects these creatures have on people and how scary they are, is something we're only just starting to learn about as people come forward with their with their testimony about them. Because these things tend to scare the piss out of people, right? It's not kind of like, oh, this was weird, kind of like kind of I wouldn't say whimsical, but there's a certain
There's a fantastical kind of thing.
There's a fantastical element to encountering a Sasquatch, right? Because there's like a weird reverence around it. Dogmen, they're big pissed off dogs and they don't like people. So I don't blame people for keeping these stories to themselves, and we're probably not really going to understand much about how these two relate to each other for a while, just because of how these entities are.
Mm-hmm. And with that, I think that actually concludes our first tier here.
Yep.
I haven't even checked the time. I don't think we're doing.
We are almost at an hour.
Yeehaw. Okay. So, I had a feeling the last 2 episodes were going to be long ones. Not going to lie. Because these require a lot of explanation. And we brought some friends. So, that's whatever. Yeah. It's just going to be a sorry Devin kind of situation.
We need to start paying him. We really do.
We do. Like, we got to get this going. With that, everybody, if you like the show and you like to hear more and you like to support us here, we have a donation link through Spotify that you can use to help support us in the show and help us do better things and get Devin some food money or something. You know what I'm saying? Get him some beer money. He's doing some shit for us. You know what I mean?
Even if you don't donate, leaving a review, liking, and subscribing, or just spreading the word helps us out too.
Absolutely. We got Twitter at KOR Live 4589, and we got all kinds of stuff there. All of our links to our Twitters, through our posts, everything. That way you can stay up to date on what we do, what we cover, and I don't know. Appreciate y'all for listening.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, let's go ahead and get into the second one. I guess I'm going to have to just pick up my food right at the door and like unpack it over there so I'm not making a bunch of noise and shit.
So, welcome to Tier 8, Chattering, aka Booger Talk. Now, we have discussed some audio recordings of, Booger Talk before, particularly the Sierra sounds, which me and Jaster both recommend as must listens if you really need to get an idea of how these things communicate. Booger Talk is very interesting because it almost sounds human, but it's not, and that's what's unsettling about it. It's been described as chattering, chuntering, what have you. It's a strange communication that it's grunts and vocalizations that almost sound like talking, but they're not, and it's strange, it's bizarre, it's unsettling.
Right. And, like, it's that part of us that kind of really gets scared because it's something that sounds like language, and people, like, linguists have listened to these videos and been like, no, there's some structure of a language going on here.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
it's in that uncanny valley, which is something to say, something that is familiar but slightly off, and probably one of my favorite psychological principles.
Yes. And it's like, it's one of the few videos I can just show anybody that's a Bigfoot skeptic, and I'm like, you explain that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, whoa. You can see it on their voice, like, you can see it on their face, man. They're, like, trying to process what they're listening to, and they kind of coming up with a blank, So, coming up with that, we're going to get into
It's also worth mentioning, a lot of, if you go into the comment sections of stuff like Sierra sounds, people will mention, like, their pets were in the room when they played it, and it scared the piss out of them.
Yes, Shadow has heard the Ohio howl, and he does not like it.
I haven't been able. I wouldn't play this around Juno because I don't want to scare my little boy. Um, I don't have speakers on my PC. I always listen
Fair.
to. I always have a headset on.
Put the
So.
headset on him. You know what I'm
Mhm,
saying?
mhm.
Like, I love Shadow, but he can be a penis, so, like, I get him back every now and then. You know what I mean?
Juno doesn't misbehave often enough for me to want to get back at him. So.
I love him. It's just like I said, he has an attitude. He's a man all of his own.
So
Let's put it that way.
this is officially the point. Like we've kind of skimmed the topic of the woo with the woman in white last tier, but starting here at tier 8, this is when things really begin to get out into the weird. And we're starting to get into the bizarre, the unknowable, the really out there things, even for true believers like me and Jaster.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, even so, if it makes us, the true believers, skeptical, just imagine how this will sound to a skeptic. And we're gonna start with interdimensional Sasquatch. See, told you it'd be weird.
Oh yeah, baby. You want to do that one, or you
Why
want me
don't
to
you
do
explain it, Jaster?
it? Okay, so people are always like, man, why can't we find anything about Sasquatch, right? Why can't we find no evidence? Why can't we find a body? If people shot one, why ain't they got it? You know what I mean? All these other kind of reasons, and people are like, it's a simple solution. It's interdimensional. And so, like, this also explains a lot of sightings that people have where they reportedly disappear behind trees or disappear behind cover that doesn't make no sense for something that size. Like, how did it just go over the ridge and completely disappear over this plain? Like this wheat field that's like 200 acres. You know what I mean? So, like, a lot of people think, hey, Bigfoot may use trees as portals and just hop to fucking different dimensions. Okay?
Oh, so we're covering two instances with this one. Gotcha.
I'll go ahead and connect them. Okay?
Yeah.
So, like, there's other type things, but people like to connect the wood knock of Bigfoot potentially to these supposed portals. Like, maybe you're hearing, you hear no one's ever seen him do a wood knock, you know? There's been some reportings of people seeing him smack things against trees or smack animals against trees and stuff like that in order to kill them. But, like, it's very rare to see a wood knock, right? People are like, well, what if that's the sound of the portal opening from another dimension and him stepping through it? And he's some sort of thing. And, like, people also like to talk about how the Native Americans, like, they don't use a lot of ultra descriptive terminology when it comes to these things, almost like they're spiritual, right? And how is it spiritual to them? How does that make sense in a modern scientific situation? And, like, it comes across as many universes theory, interdimensional. So I think this is kind of wild, like, probably the wildest thing I've heard. Like, I think of all of the foo crazy theories, there's one that I'd be like, I can see that if I believe multiple things at the same time. But this one's kind of crazy. Like, this is like Stargate Bigfoot, you know? Like,
Yeah.
literally.
And
Like,
you know what's funny about tree portals? I've heard people discuss in Dogman community as well, and I always kind of roll my eye at extra dimensional stuff because, like, it's like the go-to blanket explanation for people who don't have an explanation for it. I would personally rather say that I just don't know rather than pull something out of my ass and say that's the answer. But that's just me.
Right. And, like, there's a couple of interesting things, though, that science does kind of back up a little bit, is that we've now discovered portals are real, right? And we can even smell them. They smell like brimstone.
Really?
Right.
Wait, hold on a second. Where are you getting this?
When,
So,
when,
like-
when, When did that particular discovery
Yeah,
happen?
I was going to say, where are the scientific papers on portals being
I
used?
would love to read that.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to call you out on this one, Jaster.
Yeah, Jaster, source, please. You got some
sure.
NASA papers to show
If you
us?
have a NASA...
I would gladly believe it if you got some NASA papers.
Just gonna be like Senator Armstrong from Metal Gear Rising. My sources, I made it the fuck up.
Or made it the fuck up.
Now, I'll put it this way. This is where I find this theory unbelievable, is like our understanding of portals does not coincide with Bigfoot ripping open a Rick and Morty portal in a tree. Like, does not work like that, right? Like, essentially, a portal is where two continuous particles of mass, like flows of mass, connect, right, from point A to point B, right? And that's kind of how our electromagnetic field works. And so there's a lot going on with portals now. Like, we know that they're a thing, right?
Yep, he actually dropped it right here in our chat. It's a little old. I would like to see more stuff related to it, but this is enough to make me say, okay, yeah, this is true.
So, like, the brimstone thing, though, is
but
more like...
the scientific term for it is an X-point or electron diffusion region.
Yes.
So.
It has to do more with matter and electrons than it has to do with, like I said, Rick and Morty. You know what I mean? Like, our understanding of portals. That's what kind of makes the whole... Yeah, maybe not, like, us opening a portal to another dimension type shit, but, like, it starts to make you think we're starting to get a little bit more in the direction of maybe these portals can be used for space work or space travel or somehow access to some amount of outside of our solar system, but we don't even understand how they work yet. You know, we just figured out that they're a thing. You know what I mean? Like, we've always speculated that they're a thing. Like, I think even Einstein did, but, like, we legitimately have it now. You know, we've seen one. So, like, that's the exact kind of evidence, though, that these people would be like, see, it's a portal. But NASA found one.
But even if it's, you know, if these portals that NASA's talking about exist, again, I'd have to read through the paper, and I wonder if it's not just people hijacking actual science for their woo. Because, I mean, this is talking about, like, solar winds and all this stuff. This isn't talking about, like, a creature jumping into a tree and teleporting. I mean...
Let me put it this way. People have tossed the term around in the woo as a convenient explanation long before the scientific discovery was made. And this discovery is not them going, oh, well, scientists know portals are real, therefore Bigfoot uses portals. That's not what's happening. It's people going, well, I can't find Bigfoot, so he uses portals. That's what we're talking about.
Yes. And, like, it's just interesting to note that, yeah, we know portals exist, but not in the way that they're implying that they do.
Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah, I mean... Yeah, the whole thing about, you know, oh, he's jumping into trees and all that stuff, just... Come on, where's the...
Yeah.
It's like, again, you know, if you're gonna tell me something like that, you're gonna have to show me evidence. Or else I'm just going to laugh in your face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, the next one, however, is probably my favorite strain of Bigfoot ever. Okay? We put this down low on the list because it's the last place you would think Bigfoot would lurk, okay?
Mm-hmm. What do you think of when you think of Bigfoot? You think of thick forests, tall mountains, bushes, that kind of thing, right? Hey, what if we told you Bigfoot was commonly sighted in Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq, and to ranchers out there, they're just a common pest?
Yeah, and when the United States came in Iraqi Freedom and Desert Storm, there's people that have come back and been like, I've seen some wild shit on thermals, boy. You know what I mean? Like, there's been a few people that are snipers, right, that have had bodies that they've downed, Like, they got to stay in the same area, right? They're looking at Overwatch, trying to make sure the guys on the ground are protected, or they're doing recon or whatever, or they're in sniper fights where they have to stay low for days at a time and not move. And they've seen the bodies of the people they've shot get drug away by giant individuals that are dwarfing the size of these humans, just carrying them off in the wrong direction, you know, than like where the humans would be trying to take their dead, you know. And it's weird shit like that. And there's a story that comes up from Sasquatch Chronicles. I'm gonna plug this guy a lot. Okay.
Yeah, listen. It's like the Sasquatch podcast. It's really damn good.
It really is. And this guy comes in, and he's a infantryman that worked with the, like, either the Marines or the Army or whoever, and he was basically hired in this, like, put in this squad as muscle, right? And the whole objective was to take a bunch of money and jewels and all this other kind of stuff to pay off a local warlord who was basically a tribal leader, really, and get information or get any sort of thing they can, or the ability to move through the area, right? So they're here as peace talks, okay? So they're in there, they're breaking bread with this family, and the captain of the squad is like at the table with the guy, and they're like eating and talking and all that, and they have multiple translators, one for each side, right? And they're trying to help each other and all that other kind of stuff. So they go in, they start talking to each other, and one of the, like, this guy who's the grunt, basically, the guy who's trying to look tough, goes, hey, ask him if he's seen a Bigfoot. And they're thinking, oh god, this guy's stupid, right? And so the guy gets mad, and he's like, why are you trying to talk to me about these things? And he looks at him all weird, and he's like, wait a second, you've seen him? He goes, of course I see him. They're terrible. He goes, you know how many nights of sleep I've lost because I had to go in there when they're trying to take my sheep, and I have to chase them off with AK-47s? They're shit. They're terrible. We hate them, you know? And they're like, all the Americans are blown away, like, whoa, what? These guys, everybody there on the tribal side is acting like these things are just matter of fact. You know what I mean? And it starts to corroborate with other stories from other soldiers and things like that. And it just turns into the fact that, like, in their words, like in their language, it's called the shit thing, or crap foot, you know what I mean? Or dumb fucker, you know? Like, they literally call it everything under the sun. They hate these things.
Sorry,
I'll be right
I
back.
know that fact, but it makes me laugh every single time I hear it. Yeah, so there's another story of a sniper who was doing Overwatch. Jaster kind of made casual reference, and he was in a sniper fight. So he's taking shots, and he's moved. This is happening in a valley, and they're basically him and the guy he's fighting are on both sides, on either side of the valley, and he's taking out forces that are trying to advance on him, and they're moving deeper into this valley, but it's about a couple hours into the night that he notices that there are things coming out from the rocks and dragging the bodies away, and they happen to be dragging them in the direction that he's headed. So what ends up happening is this boy says, fuck that, and he starts moving the other direction. There's a lot of weird fucking stories you hear coming out of Afghanistan, and the shit you see on a battlefield. Honestly, that's a whole conversation in its own self, because Bigfoot is just like that's just like the scratching the fucking iceberg when it comes to weird shit that happens out in the desert. But I mean, honestly, really, veterans in general probably have a lot of stories and really should take better care of them. But that's getting into politics, and we try to step around that on this podcast if we can. So basically, Bigfoot is a pest in the Middle East, and that's really what it boils down to.
Well, See, I can actually believe, stories like that, to be honest. Because, I mean, again, I don't know if we can actually classify those things as Bigfoots, considering, depending on how close they are to, what we would understand a Bigfoot to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could just be some other creature completely, but, like, the way I see it, the reason why I say I can believe stories like that is, it's not the first time in history that wild animals have, come onto a battlefield to get food. I mean,
Yeah.
there was some stories back in World War II where there was like a pack of wolves that came into a battle between the Germans and the Russians, I believe, where it was so bad that the two sides actually had a temporary peace just to drive off the wolves because they were just that persistent and that much of a threat to the wounded and all that stuff. Because they just sit there, just run up, drag them off.
Damn.
It's like, yeah. And also too, I think like even back in medieval times, there was an alpha wolf that led a pack that, I mean, like they had this thing out like it was a battle. I mean, they're talking about like how.
Are you talking about the Beast of Gavadan?
I think so, yeah. Where it's like they like they're talking about like an epic duel between the alpha and like the master of the watch or something like that.
No,
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
that's
like they
not
had
the Beast of
to
Gavadan. That might be something else then.
It might have been, or it might
But
have been
yeah,
something
no,
else.
it's
I don't know, but
yeah, no, it's
I
a
remember-
really fascinating like
just remember
thing
the
to
past.
discuss. for
But like I was
sure.
saying though, it's not unprecedented for a wild creature to come across a battlefield and drag off bodies because hey, it's easy food. I mean,
Free meal.
yeah, it's a free it's something they didn't have to expend a lot of calories to get, so go for it.
I mean, for
Now
this-
you might be wondering, wait a moment, guys. You guys have talked about Bigfoot in relation to the U.S. military before, which that is way back in our second episode on Tier 4 when we discussed the Vietnam rock apes incident. Why here? Well, it's simple. It's because these crapfoots or stupid fuckers or whatever you want to call them are in a place that's just atypical for a unknown hominid to be, which is in the rocks. Like actual like primates and stuff like that, they live in forested areas typically. So
Well,
Hmm.
I mean,
Much more indicative of a hominid than a freaking ape. Honestly, like humans exist out there.
oh yeah, so
so you never know. It could be just an unknown tribe of humans that had gone cannibalistic on us. So
who knows?
I mean, when it comes to like the
I-
simplest stuff for Bigfoot, seems a lot more believable until someone starts
Yeah.
bringing in all of the supernatural stuff, honestly, or interdimensional.
Yeah.
the main problem with every Bigfoot type, every Bigfoot story, every Bigfoot evidence is, well, I mean, or not really evidence, is that there's no Bigfoot. There's no body.
There's
to
no
look
body.
At. There's,
Yeah, it is
and-
entirely you are going off that person's word, and that's
yeah.
why it's such a
And-
difficult topic to discuss and study.
Yeah,
Because
and as some people point out, it's like this day and age, everybody has like a high definition camera in their pockets, basically.
Yeah.
Where are the high definition pictures of Bigfoot? I mean, like
mean-
back in the day, we have all these blurry pictures. It's like, have you worked with a camera from
now
the
there's
1960s?
less excuse for it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, I do have
I'll
a
also
couple.
say,
I do have a
you
couple
can-
reasons for that. So,
Mhm.
as someone who has witnessed a paranormal event before, I was on the USS Alabama and I witnessed a door wheel start turning itself. A door that mine went to a locked, abandoned part of the ship that isn't accessible by staff or tourists. I was completely like flabbergasted and awestruck. And even though I had my phone in my pocket, it didn't occur to me to take my phone out and record that door until after it had stopped. And I stood there for like 10 minutes waiting for something to happen. And it did.
right.
There's also
But-
the fact that just because you have a camera does not mean you are good at using it.
Well,
Yeah.
again, that's it's still to the point though. It's like,
But
You
I
said-
agree.
you said you sat there
we
and
should
it-
at
it
least be
didn't-
seeing a higher volume of blob squatches.
well, it's yeah. Again, it's not just that though. It's like you sat there. You said you saw this paranormal event, and you were sat there flabbergasted. And it never occurred to you to take a picture.
Yeah, because you're
Why
so.
did it occur? Why
Like
did it occur to
you're-
them though to pull out this huge unwieldy camera and start, well, it's not huge and unwieldy, but even still,
In
it's
most of these cases, it's because they already had a camera on hand. If we're talking about a lot of the famous stuff, like like for instance, more often than like if we're talking about like famous film stuff from like the 80s and 90s, it's because these people were out doing something else and they had a camcorder already live, stuff like that.
It just kind of seems a little suspicious, though, to me, though. Again, because it's like they had a camcorder live, and it just so happened to be at the time that they had this encounter with a creature that was heretofore unknown. And nowadays, like, people going out there specifically to find Bigfoot with these expensive cameras, high definition cameras, and stuff, can't find jack shit. It's like something's not, the math ain't mathin', if you know what I mean. So
To me, it almost, if it is to be believed, it indicates an intelligence of a hominid. Something with critical thinking capacity.
But again, though, it's like, cameras. It's like it doesn't know to dodge these old cameras that have the giant flash bulbs on them at some points, but a small thing in a handheld device in someone's hand is like all of a sudden they're spooked to high hell over. I mean, the camera doesn't even like a phone doesn't even like emit anything that they should be able to pick up. I mean, why would they know to dodge that camera and not the old camera? It just doesn't make sense to me all that much.
So there was a conversation I heard, and I can't quite remember. I know it was on a podcast episode, but the difference between a lot of those older technologies and what we've got right now in our running cameras that do video and all that stuff is infrared. Like GoPro cams, all that kind of stuff. Like any sort of thing that you're supposed to just leave and forget, right? Like a GoPro has an infrared field that whenever something gets into it, that's when it knows to take a picture. Or your phone's camera also has an infrared output. So, like, that's the thing that I'd heard somebody say and be like, well, that's a possibility. Like if something can see ultra red or in some sort of infrared or some whatever, that it might be able to pick that thing up because there are animals that see those sort of wavelengths. Now, like, do I feel like that's a bit of a reach?
Yeah, it
Little
is.
bit.
It totally is.
But it would explain how the shift in technology doesn't really help.
We should go back to analog, y'all. Get your
Polaroid
big chunky, cameras you gotta carry on your shoulder out. Come on, get your VHS tapes. Let's go.
I'll do it. We'll get him again.
So this next one is a theory as to why we don't see Bigfoots that often, and it's called cave system travel. Basically, the idea is that they use natural cave systems to travel. I know, wow, shocker. This is a theory that's particularly prevalent in areas with heavy, natural caves, such as the Mammoth Cave system, which is the largest cave system in North America.
400 miles of connected caves.
Yep.
Just that cave. And, like, my part of the United States is actually very heavily ridden with caves. And that's where a lot of the whole cave theory, or cave travel theory, comes from. Is there's a decent amount of eastern Kentucky Bigfoot sightings that happen in or around caves. And a lot of these caves that are unmapped could be leading who knows where. We know caves that go, like you said, like I just said, 400 miles. And if you look at like the BFRO website, there's people that really track this information. Like when things happen, where it happens. And a lot of these people are like it looks like there's a migratory route between Michigan and Alabama. And that leads straight through Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee. But, like, what is weird is that a lot of these sightings, as soon as they get into southern Indiana, start to migrate towards the caves of the area. Which, like, maybe they are using the caves for travel.
Well, I mean, also, too, like, it would make sense for them to be, around caves and all that stuff, because caves are a natural shelter from the elements and everything, so, I mean, they wouldn't be the only ones to try to use caves. I mean, you have bears that use caves, I think wolves use, caves. I mean, there's plenty
Local
of...
cults use caves?
Sorry?
We got, like, a local cult up in southern Indiana that likes to use caves.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, so yeah, I mean, it is logical that like a creature, an animal would want to use a cave for its for bedding down in. I mean, it makes sense, and
Yeah, more of like larger creatures.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like, just think how crazy scary that would be encountering one of these things in a cave.
Well, that's
or just encountering any kind of animal in a cave.
Yeah, I mean that's a risk you're willing to take. I mean, just the other day I saw a video of a guy crawl into a cave only to turn a corner. There's a mountain lion right there. So
yeah,
yeah,
that's a call for the brown pants right there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, turning corner and running into a Bigfoot. That's going to be a day. I mean, that's a wrap on that.
Code brown right there.
But I just know it's never going to happen to me because I'm claustrophobic, and so I'm not going to go spelunking. So y'all have fun with that.
Yeah, that's a no for me as well.
The last time I was ever in a cave was, God, over 10 years ago. It was when I was still in my Boy Scout troop. And
pretty much same here for me, but it was more than 10 years.
We went on a hike through the Mammoth Cave system. Really cool experience. This was before I knew I needed insoles, so my feet wanted to fall off the whole fucking time, and I was miserable. Really cool experience. I'd love to go back there someday, with comfortable shoes.
Yeah, I the last cave I ever went in, it was back when I was a youngin' as well. I think it was a I can't remember. It was a group trip with so I don't remember if it was like with my youth group or was with a Boy Scout troop or what. But we went to a place called Crystal Falls, and it's basically it's an underground waterfall is at the end of this cave system
in Michigan.
See, I went to Ruby Falls, which is like a similar one down south.
Wait, no, I think it was Ruby Falls. Yeah, actually, now I might be mistaking Ruby Falls or mashing it together with the name of where I was actually born, which is Crystal Lake, Illinois. But
Ruby Falls in Chattanooga.
Mm-hmm.
That might be it. So I remember we drove for a while to get to it. So yeah,
beautiful, absolutely stunning.
I know in elementary school went to field trip to go into a cavern in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's Bigfoot territory right there.
Yeah, but it just, like I said, that's probably the first and last cave system I'll ever go into, because after that I got claustrophobic, and that's a wrap for me.
Mm-hmm. See, there's like our portion of the Mammoth Caves up here is like, we actually have a cavern, like right under, it's funny, it's like a quarter a mile away from the third biggest high school. Like, they were really close to having a really bad time. You know what I mean? And so they got that, and there's a huge cavern down there that they literally do like a Christmas light show down there every year that you can drive your car through it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's fun.
It's really neat. So maybe you guys come up and try that out. But
yeah,
which one you want to tackle next? This one's kind of weird.
What's
what's
this
I want to jump onto the topic. I want to jump onto the topic of mind speak. actually.
Because I was about to say, it's like we mentioned that in the last one.
Yeah, in the last tier, so I figured we should already. So, mind speak is an interesting topic. It's the idea that these creatures can communicate with us, but not verbally. They do it by intruding in our thoughts and impressing ideas upon us, per se. And this is something that, once again, ties into Dogman, too, because I have heard incidences of mind speak from Dogmen, which just, come on, man. It's already hard enough to talk about Dogmen, because I have to explain, well, they're basically giant pissed off werewolves, and now it's like, yeah, they do mind speak. Anyways. So imagine, if you will, alright, so basically it's like, the best way I can describe this is, you ever walk into a room with someone, and even though they don't look pissed off, you know they're pissed off? Because you can just kind of feel the anger radiating off of them?
Well, there's also, nonverbal cues that you pick up on, kind of like, for instance, their glare and all that stuff. But, I mean, I joke about it, too. I've had it where, my mom was angry at something, and, before she entered the room, it's like you could almost feel the chill in the air as she was approaching.
Here, let me describe it this way. Alright, so, basically, you're in the woods, and you see a Bigfoot, and it looks at you, and you get and for some reason the phrase "go away" enters your head. That's what mind speak is. It's just, I don't know. It's weird. It's supposed to be psychic. I don't know. It's dumb.
Well, I can honestly say this though. It's like if you're walking through the woods, and you run into a giant, like over 7 foot tall, hairy creature you've never seen before, the words "go away" popping in your head is probably your subconscious saying, "Get the fuck away! You're about to die."
Yeah, right. Like I feel like it's more subconscious and just natural responses to these things rather than these things actually like talking to us in our head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because especially because at this point you're insinuating that the creature is psychic.
Yes, and what?
It's like at
Psychics
that point
are real.
Yeah, it's like because at that point, not only do you have to then prove the existence of Bigfoot, but now you have to prove that psychics are a thing, and psychics aren't a thing. Like every psychic we've known about is basically a fraudster. I mean, have you guys heard of James Randi? The guy had offered $1 million to anyone that could prove that supernatural phenomenon, and no one took it up until the day he died. So
what is funny,
yeah,
is how much money the U.S. government spent on that shit back in the 70s.
Well, they also did psychedelics too.
Real.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, everyone thinks something is real to the point that they'll throw massive amounts of money at it, even though that's not proven. But I mean, until you actually study something, I guess at times you can't tell if it's real or not. But yeah, so they basically spent a lot of money to say, yeah, this is stupid.
It's like that scene in the first Spider-Verse movie where Peter's like, see, Miles has got these powers. Tell him about your powers. He's like, well, I can do this, but I can't do it on command. And Peter's like, he can't do it on command. Isn't that great? And then he goes, wait, you can't do it on command? Like, that's what those experiments basically were. It's just, I don't know. It's such a silly idea.
Yeah, especially too since it's like you said, using the example, you see it says, and you hear in your mind, "Go away." No, that's just your survival instincts kicking in and saying, "Hey man, you should have been gone like 3 minutes ago."
Yeah.
So. At least for that particular case, you could make the argument that's what that is. Now,
yeah.
If you see when and all of a sudden, Hamlet starts belting through your head, maybe you've got a case.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So I'm going to time this back to Survivor Man, right? There's an interview where he's talking, like this thing is talking to him, and it says distinctly the phrase, "Are you ready to see us?" Which is a very different thing than run or dumbass, get out of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
but also too, you can almost make the argument though that especially in his case, he's grown up in the woods, surviving all that stuff, has a better idea of how to handle himself in certain situations. Because it's like a normal person, they see something like that, they're like, run. I got to get out of here now. A more experienced person would likely be thinking to themselves, if I run, that thing's going to chase me because, that's a natural thing for a predator to think about when it sees prey.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be something like that. And at that point, if it's a Bigfoot, then your mind might be starting running wild with, other things. So it's like, I mean, yeah, it could have been that, sure, but it also could very well have been him just his mind just going a mile a minute because he sees something that you're really no one's really seen before, or not many people have seen before. It's not common, in other words. So I don't know if I'm ready. I'm going to be honest. Like, Mind Speak seems like a bunch of hogwash to me.
Yeah.
Even if someone as
Right.
reputable as Lestrade says it, but I mean, we're gonna need to see some. I don't even know how you
It's hard. It's a hard thing to prove that. You know what I mean? Like,
you'd really need to have a specimen on hand in order to do experiments with to figure that out.
Majority of it just
But
seems
with
like it's,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say a majority of it just like you guys said, just the subconscious. So like even if you try to prove it, it's still probably gonna come out your conscious just.
Well, that's why you have to have like I said, you do put if you have to have like catch a specimen that supposedly can do this mind speak stuff, then you can go do experiments to with it to figure out if it's actually talking to you or not. And this they have like double blind tests they could come up with where you wouldn't know what the outcome is, so therefore it could validate the results that way. But yeah, like again, that goes back to we need to find one of these things and capture it alive so we can figure this mess out. And I mean that's the issue right here. So
Absolutely.
and it all boils down to it's like if we capturing one would definitely prove, hey, these things exist. Then we can start answering the other questions we have, like what all can they do, what all they're capable of. Are they intelligent? Can they talk? Are they psychic? Can they jump into trees and and go to another tree? Or it's a lot of those are probably going to be zero. We're going to be like, no, they can't do that. But because it's probably like like the apes in Africa, where it's like all these things can shapeshift and they eat the young. It's like no, they eat berries and they just tend to themselves.
right.
Yeah, it's
Well, it is
yeah.
wild though that like the gorilla was a cryptid.
Yeah, that's what I was just
for a
talking
very
about.
long
Sorry.
time. So like it is kind of crazy. Like we really do think that us as humans, like the land has been completely surveyed or something. Like no, there's plenty of land on the world that we've got a radar map of the world. But we've not mapped it. We've not walked it. There's plenty of parts of the world that we've never touched or haven't touched in thousands of years. Now, like, the next thing that we brought up, it's kind of a simple one, so we can knock this out really quick, is that a lot of people think, oh, Bigfoot, right? It's a cryptid, so they think it's like some sort of mythical creature, so they think like, oh, there's only one of them, right? And it's like the same people that think that it's only in the Northwest,
Yeah.
But it's the communal Bigfoot. The topic is kind of the whole principle of in order for a species to subsist for as long as we have had sightings or recordings or oral traditions of these creatures, there would have to be a population that can sustain itself, which is a pretty simple understanding, like there's not just one of these things, so there's got to be family units of these things at some points in their life, so how does all that work, and there's a lot of people that go out there like the North American Wood Ape Conservancy that goes in there and tries to figure out pods, or trying to study family groups, where they can see that there's like 3 or 4 different sets of footprints, and like these footprints are getting bigger every year, So they know that they're not getting hoaxed on that front. Like, it's a natural progression, like a natural animal as far as growth is concerned. And so whenever they go in there and they start trying to figure out all these things, like, it just keeps on hammering the point home that Bigfoot is probably a species, not a really, like, 1 or 5 solitary creatures that live for 400 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's not going to be something like, the Loch Ness Monster or something like that, where they think there was just, like, the one of them lurking around.
I will say this. One common type of encounter is encountering a Sasquatch in its young. So that, I have no doubt that it is a communal creature. I mean, I understand where the idea it's a solitary creature comes from, because oftentimes when people see, a Sasquatch, they see a Sasquatch,
Yeah, you don't see the Sasquatches.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, but at the same time, it seems like about half the stories I've heard from you guys involve multiple Sasquatches.
Well, that's because those are extraordinary, and those are our favorite to talk about. The truth of the matter is, the average Sasquatch encounter is a solitary specimen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we like to talk about the wild ones.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Because they're more fun to talk about. That's.
Oh yeah, because that's when you have people, like, oh, I bust out my 50 cal and I started taking them down because that's the only thing that would work, and they came back every night to steal my pot. It's like,
yeah, exactly, yeah. They're just fun stories. So.
Yeah, but they're also a little more outlandish, to be honest. So it starts getting more into the.
Speaking of outlandish, I have been very curious about this one ever since you suggested it, Jaster. What the fuck is nuclear Sasquatch? Please explain that to me.
All right. So, according to people that have worked in the U.S. military, either in engineering jobs, nuclear jobs, or military security within nuclear plants in the United States, right? Because there's a lot of nuclear plants still out in the United States. They're just nowhere near any sort of population.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a decent amount of nuclear power. Well, according to Sasquatch Chronicles, okay, he gets a large amount of people in the military. Like, most of his military reports are in or around nuclear power plants that are being guarded by the military, or military bases with nuclear capabilities. Like, and it's kind of the weirdest thing about military and Sasquatch, right? It's like they get these things that like to come out there semi-often and watch them. And they'll just be out near the power lines watching the plant work. Or like seeing, like whenever they're changing out like their nuclear coils or whatever, it just so happens somebody will see one or something. Some weird coincidences between Sasquatch and habitating around nuclear power plants.
But that doesn't make. I mean,
it makes no sense, right?
Yeah, because it's like those nuclear coils. It's like you're not going to be where you can see a Sasquatch outside the base when you're changing a nuclear coil.
No. So, like, they're changing the nuclear coil, right? Then the security guy that's outside, that's always on post watching for people outside, ends up reporting something.
But even still, that doesn't make much sense because, they're shielding on stuff. You're not going to be able to detect a nuclear coil from outside the base because if you could, the people in that base are going to have some problems.
Exactly.
Of a nuclear nature. And, I mean, so it's like, that one's going to be really hard for me to believe simply because...
To me, that purely seems like coincidence.
It would
not even connected.
That's like if I said, Bigfoot keeps appearing around military bases, so clearly he's interested in military secrets. So it's like, no, these military bases are in isolated locations. Sometimes they're in the woods. You know where Bigfoot likes to hang out? Isolated locations, sometimes mostly in the woods. Like,
oh no, he's
correlation is not causation.
Oh no, he's definitely spying on our military secrets. It turns out Bigfoot's a Russian plant.
Damn!
Damn.
I mean, it wouldn't be like
We gotta
the
take him out,
first time a wild animal broke into a military base.
But I will be honest though. The first time, the first mention of nuclear Sasquatch, the first thing that pops in my mind was it's like Bikini Atoll wasn't us testing a bomb. It was us trying to kill Sasquatch.
I didn't even know what to think of when seeing the nuclear Sasquatch, honestly. It just sounded so outlandish.
Yeah,
like a nuclear-powered Sasquatch, bro.
Most
Yeah,
likely. I'm
like,
thinking of something from, like, Fallout or some shit.
yeah, it's like glow-in-the-dark Sasquatch that comes after you and irradiates the land around you.
All I think of is just that Simpsons episode with Mr. Burns just glowing in radiation.
Oh yeah, that. But no, it's like is Sasquatch like looking around at nuclear power plants? It's like, I mean, I highly doubt it's connected to like it can
The
sense
nature
it,
of the plant.
yeah, it can sense whenever the coils are being changed. It's like maybe it's just wondering what's going on because the big machine out there stops spewing smoke. Or the big
Right.
thing out there stops spewing, smoke. Or actually, it's steam. Actually,
Vapor, isn't it?
yeah, water vapor. So
Seems like once
Yeah.
again...
Right, like they got these things like all the way out in the middle of nowhere,
Mhm.
right? They're probably thinking, "What the fuck just moved in the backyard?"
so if they see it might be curiosity, but it's going to be complete coincidence that they happen to see it right when a coil is being changed or whatnot. Because and even then.
Fair.
I don't think they would take the plant completely offline to switch our core because like most of them would have like multiple towers or reactors inside of them.
Yeah.
And so it's like they'd probably just like have one reactor down while they were doing maintenance on it or whatnot while the others are still going. So it's not like there's going to be a point whenever the thing is completely off unless something catastrophic just happened, like it got hit by a tsunami and a hurricane or something like that, or an earthquake.
Right, but they don't build those near those areas anymore. Like they've distinctly stopped doing that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Good
Like,
reasons.
So let's go ahead. I think we like the tree portals thing. We're just going to go ahead and reference the fact that people do believe that Bigfoot has Rick and Morty levels of power here.
Yeah, but those people are also
Whenever I
like
think
gross.
of tree portals, I just think of Nightmare Before Christmas with those trees.
Man,
But yeah,
truly weird shit.
yeah, it's like the whole tree portal thing. Mind speak tree portals, every interdimensional Bigfoot. That's going to be a very hard sell because that's just too far into outlandishness.
I don't think you can sell anybody
Yeah.
on that kind of thing because you would have to prove that.
Oh, trust me. There are people
there's
out there that
people
you can
believe
sell.
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah,
listen.
I know that.
Listen, all you need to do is go in the comments section of any of like say what's some of the ones we like to listen to on YouTube, like Smoky Mountain,
Rocky Mountain
Rocky Mountain Sasquatch,
Bigfoot and Beyond.
Bigfoot Beyond, stuff like that, and you will
World
see these
Bigfoot
people down in the
Radio.
comments talking about all sorts of weird bullshit, some of which we have in our tiers that are just so out there. It's like, what are you
well,
on
I mean,
about?
I do
kind of
understand with that kind of stuff, but I mean, like, for, like, other people, like, there's no way you're gonna...
Oh yeah, no, when you're trying to convince people about Bigfoot, this is not the shit you should talk about.
Yeah, no.
No.
I mean, like, keep it simple.
It makes you look like a crazy person
Mhm.
talking about
Oh
it.
yeah.
And it completely discredits the idea that you're trying to, like, spread as well.
Like,
Mhm.
if you're trying
So-
to get someone to believe in this
Yeah.
kind of stuff, just keep it simple. Don't start,
Yeah.
like, interdimensional, like,
Yeah,
ape-man. It's like, no, stop.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's like if you're gonna start off with Bigfoot, just there's a giant ape that lives out in the woods that we haven't been able to pin down and classify yet. Don't start off with, it can jump into trees and teleport.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely means you're a little far gone.
It's
so-
like,
You should
it's
drop
like,
the psychedelics.
yeah, it's like at that point, my first question to you is, can I meet your dealer? Because he got some good shit on.
Yeah.
It's like, damn.
So,
So
as awesome as a point this out would be to close off on, we do have one more thing left on this tier, which is called dominance fights. You want to get that out of the way for us real quick, Jaster?
all right. So as you can imagine, in any sort of species, you got competition, right? For breeding rights or whatever. And allegedly there are people that have come in contact with multiple Bigfoot, and they don't give a shit about the human because they're too busy beating shit out of each other for some reason, right? It could be a solitary male seeing another solitary male, or like an alpha with another solitary male or something, trying to take him out of the pack and like take over. But generally speaking, whenever these two giant individuals meet, it's a pretty fantastic story. Like the one that stands out in my mind was this man who was duck hunting, right? And so for duck hunting, there's two types of blinds that you use. You can either build a stationary blind, or what a lot of people around lakes do, or rivers, is they'll build their boat into a blind so they can just lay down in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all you gotta do is sit up, and then there's all the shooting lanes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this guy's got a boat, and he's got a little bit of a fort kind of thing, so he can kind of sit in it instead of lay in it, right? Because it's a John boat, but he kind of built him a little bit of a lean-to kind of thing. And he's sitting up on the riverbank, and he didn't get a whole lot of sleep that night, so he passes out. Well, when he wakes up, it's because he hears a roar from one of these individuals, like on one side of the ridge. And it's almost immediately challenged by another one directly behind him, right? And so these, like, they start roaring again, and they're getting closer and closer and closer, to the point where on the other side of the river he can see one, and then the other one comes charging past his boat over the, like, hops this small river kind of creek kind of thing, and they start going at it, start beating the shit out of each other, trying to rip each other like apart, like all kinds of crazy shit, making a racket, like they're crashing into trees and breaking off like decent sized trees and stuff like that. And the guy's just completely gobsmacked, as one would probably be if I seen two giant fucking silverback gorillas on steroids trying to beat the shit out of each other in a Mississippi bayou. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on here? So he gets in there, like, he's kind of spooked because he's kind of in a spot where if he starts the boat and he tries to get away, he doesn't know if they're gonna, like, suddenly stop what they're doing and start fucking him up, right? That's like always a thought in the back of his head, like, can I become something that they want to fuck up first and then continue to fuck themselves up? So he's trying to, like, quietly scoot himself to the boat, like down the boat to where he can get to the motor. And he ends up basically not watching them, but they're getting closer. And they end up stumbling across this creek river kind of thing. Let's say a medium-sized creek, kind of shallow, and ends up knocking into the boat and over into the other side of the bank, like not really even paying attention to the fact that there's a boat there. So this guy's got to, like, actually get out of his boat at that point to push the boat back into the river to get it started to go. All while these things are fighting. And, like, he ends up getting out of there a little bit after one of them just starts getting the smaller one on the ground and starts, like, hammer fisting its chest until it dies. And so that thing gets up, kind of walks off into the woods. So he, like, kind of pops his head up, pushes shit back into the boat, fucking gets the hell out of there. And, like, that's kind of the craziest thing I've ever heard, honestly. Like, the rarity of being able to see one, let alone two, and then the fact that they're pissed off and wanting to kill them, one of each other instead of you. Like, that's a whole other level of 1 in a million, you know? Like, for every one Sasquatch, like, every one of these, you got a million Sasquatch, like, reports. You know what I mean? But to be fair, that is pretty common amongst how apes fight, where it's a very dirty, very, like, brutal, vicious kind of thing. Like, whenever you hear about chimpanzees or
I was just about to bring up
each other,
chimpanzee wars, yeah.
it is brutal. Like, war crimes mean nothing to them.
No.
You know what I mean? They do that shit every day.
And with that, we're gonna leave off here because if we go over the 2-hour mark, Dev's gonna be pissed at us. Yeah, he's probably already gonna be pissed at us that we're already near the 2-hour mark. So,
And we got another one.
but we got it in. We got it done. Alright, so that's it for now, people. We've already done our plug midway through. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.